Welcome to Off-Road Travel TV.
Destry Abbott is one of America's greatest racers of all times. We recently caught up with him at Speed and Sport Adventures dual sport ride in Park City, Utah to learn about his bike setup tips. Take it away, champ.
Now the KTM, the 500, XCW is probably my go-to bike for dual sport rides. Like with this adventure ride we did today, last few days, I love the non-linkage. It works really well in the rocks. Suspension setup, wide ratio, 6 gear. I can still cruise along 75, 80 on the roads, and it's just a fun, easy bike to ride. It's got a lot of torque, and for the 500, I'm a short shift kind of guy, and the bike works really well for that. Yeah, so I have my controls, my handlebars are probably my biggest setup. The older I've gotten, I've always been big about Fast Company, the flex bars. I run the MX bin, which is 12. I run the stock ones. They have red, blue, yellow. They even have black, which is really stiff. But being in my 50s, I like a little flex to it. It makes it a little more plush. It makes the forks a lot more, less harsh, I should say, and less vibration. So for me, it's a go-to. I have this on all my bikes, depending on its hard enduro, motocross, dual sport. This is definitely the setup I like. And with the ARC levers, the foldable, I run the composite plastic and a GPR stabilizer on the bikes that I ride that are faster, higher speed, going through gears. Of course, the mirror. With our street legal bike, it's kind of nice to have an idea of your surroundings. And just some works connection. Some of the stuff is a little more bling, but as I get older, I like to look good. I think for the dual sport rides on adventure rides and stuff like that, even going down to Mexico, Baja and stuff like that, I run the bigger IMS tank. I think this is 3.8, somewhere around there. I could be wrong on that, but I could get over 100 miles on this, depending on the variety of the type of riding, how hard I ride. But I do 100 miles with this tank with no problem, and that pretty much gets me to fuel whenever I need it. Very fortunate to work closely with KTM. AEO sets up our suspension. This is the track stuff, cone valve forks, and compared to the stock stuff, it doesn't compare. It's like next level. But again, it takes somebody that knows how to set it up the correct way. The suspension is phenomenal. It has a big range, but it still takes a quality company to understanding the testing. And I've done plenty of testing. And for me, it's plush. It's it's got a good progressive feel, so I could ride it aggressively. But like today, we're in the tree roots, rocks. It's slippery wet. It works really well, and it blows through, but it stays up in the stroke. Where my stock stuff was a little divey, it worked well through that. But this stuff is definitely, you pay for it, but in the long run, it makes me happy, and I'm enjoying my rides even more with less energy. So the headlights, Moto Minded does this, and they set these lights up really nice. Like I point them down as much as I can unless it's dark, and I'll point them up a little bit because they're so bright. They work so well, and one's got more of a wide range, one's more of a spotlight. And this setup has worked really well for me, especially down in Mexico or riding night. In Arizona, we like to ride at the night because it's so hot in the summer, and we can see where to go, and it's almost kind of like daylight besides potholes and stuff like that. Yeah, my triple clamps, we have the KTM bottom clamp, which is on their KTM hard parts. I run the upper clamp, which is a GPR. It's a KTM, of course, and you'll see the stabilizer where I can adjust the stabilizer, making it stiffer. If I'm in the tighter stuff, I just turn it down. Pretty simple to do, and it makes you ride lighter with your hands. You don't have to hold on as much, and for me, it makes it just easier to ride. It's one less thing I have to tighten up for, and it's a good control. But the triple clamps are nice that they started making it split because it gives the bike a little more flex. So now the bike will actually move a little bit more. You don't want a tight bike. So with it being more flexible with the clamps, stabilizer, especially with the handlebars, I want a little flex to the bike, and that makes the bike go straighter, handle better, and it's been working really well. So you can see I'm a ways up on this one because we've been riding up here in Utah. It's a lot more technical, tighter terrain on some of this stuff. The more you raise the forks, the more the bike is going to turn, the more it's going to be unstable. Where if I'm like in sand, let's say high speed stuff, I'll drop the forks down, which then in return doesn't make the bike as twitchy or turn as well, but it's really stable. So I'm kind of playing around with rider sag, same thing with the shock, same thing with the forks. Where I'm at right now is a pretty neutral position where it works pretty much well everywhere, and that's my number one goal. When I do change fork tube height, I don't adjust the shock as much. I will actually adjust the fork height more than I will the shock itself. So I can play around with rider sag, but I'm around 200 pounds, so my rider sag is pretty neutral for the most part. If I'm in some fast or high speed stuff, again, I can play a little bit there, but most of the time I'm playing around with the fork height and the triple clamps. So yeah, I run the version 5 on the GPR triple clamp, GPR stabilizer. Amy grips, I run the half waffle with the soft compound. I really like a flex to it, and the same thing with the bars, but it makes the hands not, blistered up as much. It works well, and with it a little stickier with the softer compound, I like that where you don't have to hold on as much too. So I do run a stock motor on this KTM 500, but we did take off the smog. We took off some of the stuff with the restrictions. Being in Arizona, we don't have the restrictions that some states do. And, I did put a Vortex ignition on it to make it rev a little bit higher, opened up the air box, and it's pretty much like my 450 motobike, but with the 500, it has a lot more torque. You can short shift. This is a 6-speed, so the 6-speed is like an overdrive. 6 gear is, you pop it in 6, you're doing 80 with no problem. And that's pretty much, I run the stock exhaust. I have an FMF, but for this ride, I like it quiet. And I threw the exhaust stuff back on it. But with Recluse, we have a torque drive in it. It's not the auto. I personally like the torque drive better. It's all preference depending on the type of riding you're doing. If you're doing hard enduro, I can understand going the auto route. But for me with this bike, it's not my hard enduro bike. And it works really well with this setup. I'm big about having protection. You want to protect the bikes as much as you can. With the AXP skid plate, I got a disc guard, the chain guide, a chain slider, a foldable brake tip. There's quite a few things that, when you hit the bike, hit rocks, whatever it may be, out on the trail, I want to make the bike last as long as I can. And protecting the bike, just like protecting the body, wearing the right gear, same situation with the motorcycle, making sure your bike is protected the best it can be. And I think I did a good job with this thing. This bike's been really good for me, and it got us through this 3-day ride too. So I have the IMS pegs. They have quite a few different ones. You can see these are the meatier ones. They have MX ones. They have Enduro pegs, which are even longer. I have that on another bike, but this is my MX pegs, the IMS. It's called the Pro Series. And I'm big about foot pegs. I like good grip because that's where all your base is. Your foundation starts at your foot. I ride more on the balls of my feet, heels are dropped, and I want to be loose. So if I don't have good foot pegs, my feet are sliding out the peg. Where now with these foot pegs, I can put the weight on the pegs, the bike's going to stick with me. So I don't have to squeeze as much. I want to be loose on the bike, and the pegs allow me to do that. As we mentioned a little bit on suspension, the cone valve, track shocks, we have a high speed and a low speed. We adjust the high speed the most. Nice adjust on rider sag. You have an 8mm that you can do with a gun or a T-handle. But with this setup here, it's not cheap. But again, if you're looking for the best performance, this is the way to go. And I like having the high speed, the low speed, which is really changing minute little things. Same thing, rebound at the bottom. I adjust my suspension a lot depending on the type of riding I'm doing. With the rocks here, we opened it up a little bit more so it'd blow through. In sand, then I want to be up in the stroke. I want the bike to stay up, higher speed. Then I'll go in on the valving or go in with clickers to keep the bike up in the stroke also. Yeah, we talk about little bling. Like my bike here, I had a good friend of ours, CM Off-Road, built this motorcycle for us. And he anodized the black, he anodized the radiators, just some fun little things to make it look cool. And as I gotten older, I don't go as fast anymore, so I like to look good, So it's just a cool thing he did. And I'm really happy with the way this bike turned out and works. Like this is one of my favorite bikes that I can kind of ride anywhere. We're riding technical stuff to 80-mile-per-hour stuff, and it cruises along just fine. So the Moscow Moto bags for adventure rides is a nice thing to have. Today I had food in here. I had a tube, even though I run Nitro Mooses front and rear with the Dunlop tires. But yeah, I'll put stuff in there. I started out with the jacket this morning since it was cold. And then halfway into the day, starts getting in the 70s and you start working a little bit more in the technical stuff, then I'll throw my jacket in here. Of course, I have tools on me. I carry my USWE system with water tools, gels, different things like that to help me kind of get through the day. But yeah, the Moscow Moto bags I've been really happy with, and they're far enough back where I can move around really well on the bike. Every now and then my butt will tap this, but it doesn't bother me. I can go just as fast, and I honestly don't even notice this most of the time. What I ran this weekend is that I'm a Dunlop guy. I've been a Dunlop guy for 20 plus years. MX53s is what I ran with the Nitro mousses. I have the soft mousses in there for this weekend. 3 days is no problem. You can put a lot longer on those mousses itself. It's nice not to worry about flats, especially in rocks. And you don't want to be that guy on the trail that's holding everybody up or stopping and having to deal with that. The RK chain, the DDC sprocket, you know, it's a lot of the stock components nowadays are really good, but there's a couple little things you can do to kind of take it to the next level. And that's kind of what I do with my bikes is I put stuff on there that I know it's going to help longevity, performance, whatever it may be. So with the RK chain, I run the O-ring. This one's, you know, the old school type. In motocross, endurocross, different type of races, I run no O-ring, or then they have a really thin one. This one's old school. I wouldn't say old school, but the best performance. It's as far as longevity. Like this chain will last me probably as long as I have this bike. I have stock gearing on this bike. It works out just fine. First gear is kind of a granny gear, but the time you get to sixth gear, you're in overdrive, and it's plenty good. So I run second, third gear most of the time, covering the clutch. But yeah, with the torque drive clutch, the Recluse, it works really well with this setup. So I run the Pro Moto Billet kickstand. Like it's a nice one that's a bolt-on. It folds up super easy. It has a spring inside of it that holds it up. And this is what I ran at ISTE when I raced ISTE back in the day. And they've always been great. And I've had this on this bike for 2 years, and it's still working really well. So I like having that, and definitely kickstands are a must for me. So one thing I really, if I pop this open, you would see I have a funnel web filter in here. I'll pop that open for a second. And this is actually, oh, the Moscow bag might be in the way, but this is 3 days. Oh, this is 3 days. Oh, this is 3 days of riding. Sorry about that. And that's, you could tell that's this, the way they design this, and this is funnel web filters, phenomenal. Like 3 days of riding, that looks pretty dang good. And I still probably wouldn't even change it. But yeah, it has a lot more surface to it, the way they design their filters, and been really happy with the way that my bikes run. And, you know, especially back in home in Arizona where it's really dusty, it's kind of a must to have a good filter. So I run the Maxima oils. I run Maxima pretty much everywhere, you know, on this bike. Contact cleaner, chain lube, of course, gear oil. You know, there's a lot of, you know, when it's muddy, I threw SC1 on the bike just to help the mud not stick, especially under. I don't want to put SC1 on the bike on anywhere by the graphics, anywhere my bike's body's going to be rubbing, because it's like WD-40. You don't want to be slippery. So I want that bike to stick really well with me. But the SC1, it works really well, especially under the fenders, under the skid plate. When it's muddy, it'll wash right off, or the water will wash it right off. The seat concept, that's one thing I have on all my bikes. Great group of people, great company. You can see the breast cancer for my wife, who's still fighting that one. But yeah, it just has a good feeling. We talk about same thing on foot pegs, on having grip. The seat cover is the same way for me. When I put my butt on this thing, I don't want to be sliding, going up hills, whatever it may be. And for me, I don't want to say the stock seat covers are horrible, but the seat concepts are a must for me. That's the first thing I put on my bikes, besides bars and a couple little gadgets like that. This is standard foam. I run the same height. And if I go down to Baja, they have like a dual sport one that's a little more padded, a little bit softer, especially if we're sitting on longer roads and stuff like that. And they make a wide range, different variety of seat covers and seat designs. So I like the motocross bend. It's or not the motocross type of seat. It's kind of what I run on all my bikes, and it works well. So I don't run the fan on the KTM 500 because I'm not riding this bike in the technical stuff like I would my 300 or even the 350. My two-stroke 300, I have fans on, but I'm riding hard enduro, which I'm going 2 miles per hour. With my dual sport, I'm riding a good pace, so I'm not worried about putting a fan on this. If I was riding more technical stuff, I would for sure put the fan on. I'm Destry Abbott, and this is how I set up my bike.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Instagram. See you on the trail.